Welcome to the 2025 season of Coffee Talk. My name is Stephen Ruby. I am the moderator of Coffee Talk for AIA Southwest Florida. This morning we're talking with Timothy McCarthy, the AIA RIBA and lead AP. He's a partner and managing principal from Howerton, New York City. Tim's leadership in planning and design market-driven solutions has created many enduring places in this country. His work focuses on innovation through design for healthy living, achieving transformative development objects that drive optimal health outcomes through design innovation in the built environment. Amongst other experiences, Tim's work includes the Naples Beach Club here in Naples, a Four Seasons resort, the Old Naples Hotel, Jupiter Island Club, Half Moon in Jamaica, the Cloister, the Lodge, and the Ocean Forest at Sea Island, the Spa, the Inns in Aurora, and the global expansion of the Cabot Collection. It's an amazing resume of hospitality projects. Tim is an advisory board member for Cornell University's Institute for Health Futures, and he continues to lead Hart Howerton's sponsored research at the University of Virginia Center for Design and Health. He was a working group member of the International Well Build Institute's Well Community Standard and their Well Advisory for the Hotel and Resort Health Safety Rating. He recently finished his term as the chair of the Urban Land Institute's Global Exchange Council, was an inaugural ULI Health Leaders Network Fellow, remains an active contributor to ULI's Building Healthy Places initiative, and participates regularly in ULI panel discussions. He's delivered guest lectures at Cornell University, the University of Virginia, and the Institute of Classic Architecture and Art, and has been an invited design juror for the University of Notre Dame and Kent State University's architecture program in Florence, Italy, a place that I studied when I was in my undergraduate.
What a great connection.
Tim holds a bachelor's degree from Notre Dame, master's in architecture from University of Pennsylvania. He's a member of AIA, of course, the Royal Institute of British Architects, Urban Land Institute, and an impressive resume. Good morning, Tim. It's great to have you here today.
Likewise, great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Your firm specializes in hospitality and resort projects internationally, right?
Amongst a collection of other things, yeah.
I've seen several of your projects, both here and offshore, and each one is different. There does not seem to be a signature design character that identifies your firm. Why is that so?
It probably originates in some of the first questions that we begin asking ourselves about each opportunity. And the real starting question for us is, what is going to be a day in the life of this particular place? And by extension, that means we have to do deep research in understanding what's unique about the culture, about the climate, about the language, the food, all of the things that are going to contribute to the choices people make about where they take their tourism dollar, and how we best celebrate and position that experience to ensure that they're walking away saying, gosh, I really want to come back and be a part of the next turn. They overhear something at breakfast or at dinner that says, oh, I didn't put my kids into that program on this trip, but I'll make sure that I take advantage of it on the next. Or a family that shows up as a multi-generational group of individuals and families that come together to spend time, overhear a couple, and all of a sudden you're starting to say, gosh, we could come back here, just the two of us, and spend time here. So that rooting of a conversation about experience then in turn says, let's do additional research as to what's the backdrop going to be for all of these different experiences. And that backdrop includes both architectural solutions, but uniquely as an interdisciplinary firm, we're also engaging with our interior designers and with our landscape architects and with our planners, trying to determine that unique assembly of cultural attributes. And by extension, then, the outcome are places that really celebrate the environments where we're working. And that might be in the Bahamas, that might be here in Florida, that might be abroad in Europe or in Asia, and it might be on the West Coast. Each one of these places have really unique attributes that we're seeking to identify and then celebrate and ensure that those are the memories that people are taking home. Those are the Instagram photos that they're posting and sharing with their friends and their family. And people are immediately attracted to that type of experience when they see those come to life.
Well, how do you gather all of that data and all of that information and assure that it's legitimate and that it is relevant, still relevant, both whether it's experiential or physical images that you're referencing?
Well, there's a few different steps to that. Firstly is recognizing that we definitely don't have all of the answers. And so it's assembling the right types of teams. It's bringing together local experts as well as people who have an international perspective on things. As we look to for sale real estate as part of some of these projects, we need local expertise, but we also need to incorporate things where those types of buyers have choices. So what is going to drive that choice to a particular market? It's supporting the things that are consistent in that lifestyle, but tweaking them in recognition of local experts. So a lot of it is building the right types of teams. We sit in one chair amongst many around a table, and the other 25 or 30 companies that are represented are helping to enrich and influence the work and the outcomes that we have. But in addition to that, our practice is built in this innate desire to really understand what makes an individual place tick. Not only the place itself, but what our client might be seeking to achieve in terms of how are they going to measure success, and how can we take those outcomes and embed them within a design process. So teasing out of whether it's internet research, whether it's time on the ground. You mentioned Naples. This was the 10th year of working here in Naples, so spending plenty of time in a given place. And recognizing that we're going around taking lessons, taking cues, taking photographs, talking to people, having big ears, I'll call it, in terms of sitting at a restaurant in the evening after a long day and overhearing the ways that people spent their time here. And then marrying that all together into a unique design solution, sharing that back to stakeholders, and hearing their responses to things. Pivoting where we need to pivot, recognizing that there's really no pride of authorship in the context of the team that needs to contribute to the success.
It's interesting because you mentioned a large team, and that's kind of interdisciplinary design, which we were talking before we went on camera about how that works or doesn't work. And what's the secret sauce to making that collaboration work smoothly and result in a product that is unified?
A big part of it goes back to the founding of the firm and the way that Bob Hart and Dave Howerton set out to create a practice that is truly interdisciplinary, and I specifically grabbed that term as something distinct from multidisciplinary. And for us, that means a daily interaction between people trained as landscape architects, people trained as architects, interior designers and planners, all coming together to use their technical education and their expertise, but ultimately to share ideas and come up with a common solution where indoor rooms are complemented by outdoor experiences. Each of those together celebrate a unique alignment, whether that's a visual alignment to something that's much grander than anything that we could ever imagine in some of these rural settings, or in an urban place, understanding how people are going to interact with a particular building. But that interdisciplinary nature of the practice has really teed up the day-to-day inner workings of a firm that says, gosh, I overheard a certain conversation, and that way of thinking while the specific solution you overheard might be for a different project, that way of thinking is going to enrich and influence and pivot some of the design decisions that you're making. So whether it's discipline based, or you might overhear somebody talking to a contractor and you get a construction stage thing influencing a concept design sketch that you're doing on that desk, but it's an open plan office where you're overhearing and overseeing and pinning up drawings on all of our fabric walls, where you're able to print things out and see in hard copy a collection of images that together propose a way of addressing all of these different objectives.
Just in the few minutes we've been speaking, I don't know how many times you've used the word listener here, which I think is critical for us as design professionals, to listen rather than to talk. Too often we're about presentation and about talking and explaining what we do and why we do it, and not often listening to what the client and the community is saying. So I think that's an important factor. And I think the other thing that you just said, that you print out and pin things up. In this technology now, where things are on screen in digital, and you have my staff, they're focused on the two screens in front of them all day, and you only see a segment of the work. To be able to print it out and put it on the wall is an interesting, I think, beneficial exercise.
We have a number of schools that we go and recruit from every year, and quite a few of them actually still incorporate hand drawing as part of their curriculum. And so people are coming in. I think it teaches something between the hand and the eye and the brain in terms of a comprehensive understanding of place. And while they might train that way, we also then, as people arrive to the firm, we have a program called Art in Practice, where we're taking people out to Bryant Park or Central Park, or in the winter in New York, people are headed up to the Science Museum and doing sketches not just of the architecture, but some of the organic shaped forms of the fossils and skeletons at the Natural History Museum, for example, where it's forcing you to record and transpose whatever you're seeing into a notebook, and then we often share them back in the office, and you can see some exceptional talent. But it then spatially is asking your brain to conceive of what is the experience in this place and what's unique, and by extension then you can start to use that in all of the various softwares you have, for sure, but you can output it and have a common language of.
Kudos to you, because I think that that eye-hand coordination and the visually documenting what your eye sees, it tends to be a lost art because of the way technology is going. Kudos to you in your firm to try to instill it.
It sure adds, I think, the human element to the places that we create, just that intuitive or that innate ability to translate and transpose those lessons.
You're very successful at mitigating corporate image of your clients, local architectural and environmental and character in an area, and the desires and the needs of the communities you work in. Experienced that watching you do the Four Seasons. How do you go about navigating what may often be conflicting visions and conflicting agendas in a project?
Well, I think one of the dirty secrets about architectural education is how much of our success as a profession is rooted in communication. It's both listening, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, but it's also then sharing back. And so you walk into early stage meetings where you're listening to a very small table of people saying, here's what is going to define success. These are the objectives we're hoping to accomplish and achieve. But then later on, you need to take a singular solution that responds to all of those different objectives and share it back to all of those individuals. And over time, that table gets larger and larger as you reach out to the community. But often for the work that we're doing, you mentioned corporate clients, it is sophisticated long-term real estate investors. And so of course they are looking to make sure that they have a commercial success. Oftentimes what we're finding is that the things that are most successful in a given market are in direct response to the climate or culture of a particular place. It's not parachuting in a solution that worked in a certain location and saying, gosh, we've got the right answer for this particular place. And so often that means deep research into the architecture of a place or the ways that architecture in a particular community has responded to climate over time, for example. So a lot of the low cost, high return things of roofs that shed water, for example, as opposed to flat roofs or eaves that don't have guttering and things like that here in Florida, where you know why things have evolved. And so why would you steer away and pretend like you can import an answer from a different location, but rather take all of those lessons and reinterpret them for the market that you're building. And it's all in anticipation of who is going to actually be spending time there, right? Their real estate dollar from a condominium point of view, their tourism dollar from a hotel point of view, are all able to be put to work in any number of choices. And so how do you make sure that you're attracting that dollar? Ultimately, it means that you're really celebrating what's unique about a place, and really focused in on those experiences, understanding the multiple generations, layering into that early stage choices about stewardship. So many of our clients are long-term holders of a particular place. So if you're going to be a steward of a community, then you need to really understand and engage with what has made it tick, what attracted you as an investor into that particular location in the first instance, and how do you be respectful of that tradition so that as you become a long-term engaged community member, you're able to position that asset and that experience and the employees that work there and interact with all of those different guests to ensure that the best version of that particular place is what's celebrated, and that's the thing that you take home and share with your friends and with your family.
Since that's probably why your architecture and your designs are so unique to different locations.
I call it architecture with a lowercase a. There's a version where I'll be sitting in a recruiting conversation with a potential employee, and we don't tend to have a lot of success with people who really try to practice architecture with a capital A, meaning, hey, I'm a building, look at me. I've done really great details. And so the lowercase a is something that is designed in concert with the landscape and really becomes a backdrop for life to happen.
We're talking about environment, not buildings.
Correct.
Exactly. Well, as an urban designer, I really appreciate that. You talk a lot about your client and about when you do a project like this, and when you experience this with several of the projects that you've done here in Naples, you often get negative community feedback. You get the NIMBYism. You get, gee, this is out of character with what's going on in our city. You always get that negative feedback. How does your firm deal with those community situations to get consensus, you're never going to satisfy everybody, but how do you work toward consensus that the community feels good about what's going on?
You build up relationships over time. And I mentioned communication earlier. A big part of it in that relationship building process is understanding what are the concerns of those different people and sharing back to them what are the underlying land use rights and ordinances and controls that are in place and have been in place in many instances for many generations. People therefore should know what's mapped to the plot to their north and the plot to their south. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes an individual project becomes a scapegoat for a larger community issue as market economics are saying, gosh, Naples, as one example, is a great place to live. It just got added to one of the best places to retire in America under U.S. News and World Report. It's attracting attention and driving growth not only of Naples but Collier County more generally. And so through that, whether it's specific to here or more generally across our practice, is a willingness to engage and spend time with all of those different stakeholders. Often it's in a one-on-one setting. Sometimes it's, I'll call it playing the ballroom, where you've got several hundred people, finding that right balance between a willingness to accept groupthink, where that larger audience and individual can start a ball rolling and then everybody else piles on. In that case, we usually hand out the flak jackets to those of us who are up presenting before we get started. But nevertheless, I think is just a willingness to be open and honest and transparent through that process, that here's what we're hoping to achieve. Here are the mitigating controls in terms of the ordinances, and we hear you, and these are the things that we can do in response to those. So even if you look, for example, at the Four Seasons, the massing of that hotel is a direct outgrowth of conversations with immediately adjoining neighbors, as well as how the community is transitioning more generally from single-family homes to the south to multifamily zoning that's underlaid the whole Miracle Mile for many, many years now.
I do a lot of community revitalization in distressed cities around the country. And that engagement, that community engagement is so critical to gain consensus and to get to make a project move smoother. But I find if you have to start at the very beginning, where do you engage? When do you start engaging? If you wait too long, you get feedback. Well, you already made the decision. Why are we talking?
Yeah.
How do you start? How do you get into
a lot of Saturday meetings, honestly. I'm thinking specifically, we just opened a community center in Menlo Park, using our team in San Francisco, where we also, about half the firm is on the West Coast. And it's our first net zero building, which came out of conversations with the community. Hey, if we're going to own, inherit, and operate this building in the long term, how do we put in place, through the capital investment side, solutions that minimize operating costs? So it's a net zero building. That was one of the objectives. There are then programming types of conversations that came out of that in terms of pools and indoor recreational spaces for sports, but also community spaces where you can come together and you can learn and you can share stories, and you have kids all the way through older population all in common spaces together. And so those all came out of Saturday morning workshops, where you're doing the old school easel and big boards, and you're writing down keywords, and you have multiple tables, and we were hosting stations that really meant to tease out of individuals everything from aesthetics to things like sustainability objectives, and really defining a community-led KPI, key performance indicator of what is success going to look like.
Yeah. And it works, doesn't it?
It does. It's a labor-intensive process, but I suspect that you never really have a scientific case study to say, if you did X, did you get Y? And if you did A as an alternative, did you get B? Meaning that particular project had a lot of upfront time, and it probably eased the path on the latter stages of work. I don't necessarily have the counterpoint on the same scope and scale of project to say, hey, if we just came up with an idea and then shared it out, how would that have gone? But I think intuitively we all know enough that the more we can have that front end input, and the more that it's rooted in the particular place that you're working, the better off you are. There's plenty of time that's necessary to deal with conversations with mechanical engineers and resolve waterproofing details, and you need to reserve all of that time for the later stages, not a wholesale redesign because somebody showed up late to a conversation, or you neglected to engage with all of the necessary stakeholders.
You're unfortunate that you have clients who understand and respect the fact that it is time consuming. It does take time. Too often clients cut that process down. Why do we need to do all of this? I've been through that process. And it's testament to your clients that they understand it, and they see the benefit and the value in allowing you to do it. So kudos. You're going to have a huge impact on Naples with 3 iconic projects that you're doing. You're the architect for the redevelopment of the Naples Beach and Resort Hotel, the Four Seasons. You're doing a small boutique hotel on 3rd Street, which is under construction, just around the corner from my office. And you're just about ready to break ground on the Port Royal Club, which is another iconic building in the city. What were some of the challenges you faced with these projects, and what are some of the opportunities that you found that really enhanced your design as a result of it?
Great question. Each one of them is so unique. We'll take it one project at a time. The first one being 3rd Street Hotel, and the 3rd Street Hotel is the home of hospitality in Naples. It's the origin of hotel and hosting people. And if you look back to some of these great old black and white photographs at the Palm Cottage, the home of the Historic Society here in Naples, you see how it acted as a community living room. And despite the community of 1- and 2-story cottages, even that old hotel had 2 clear stories of architecture, meaning you could understand 2 complete stacked hotel rooms, and then there was an eave that took over with dormers for a 3rd story of accommodation. And so that was a direct lesson in terms of how do you marry together a large hotel. Now in that instance, it actually ran from Broad all the way down to 13th historically, and sat with this beautiful iconic cupola at the end of 12th as you come off the pier and you're walking towards what's now the parking lot that supports all of the activity along 3rd Street and really hosts everybody each evening as it comes to life. So all of those lessons were things that were cues for us about whether it's the lifestyle. Hey, this is a community gathering place. It was a spot that in those old smaller cottages dating back to the 19th, early 20th century, those, whenever you wanted to host a dozen or 2 dozen or a couple hundred people, you were hosting it at the hotel. Now, of course, you fast forward to Hurricane Donna and the impact that had, and ultimately the Watkins family, who had bought it in the late 40s, moving that whole hospitality operation up to what's now going to be the Four Seasons site, the old Naples Beach Hotel and Golf Club. But taking all of those cues, not only about architecture, but about the lifestyle, about how it interacts with 3rd Street, because a portion of the 2.1 acres actually touches 3rd Street between the old Naples building and Sea Salt. And so what is that expression, and what does that look like? How do people interact with the hotel when it comes over towards the east side? But equally, where are people arriving? How do you utilize the width of Broad Avenue, for example, and make sure that this building feels comfortable as people come and go from a vehicular point of view? So that was one set of lessons. It was enriched and influenced by a family that's owned that property for generations now, for coming up on 5 decades of land ownership for that particular family on that site. And so they're long-term community members, and they wanted to do right by the community. It involved a tremendous amount of stakeholder outreach, meeting with many of the condominium associations, the tenants along 3rd Street, recognizing that the hotel will deliver a tremendous amount of captive audience in terms of what the retail and food and beverage offerings in the restaurants are along 3rd Street. But striking that right balance between all of those potential guests of those restaurants with the reality that a hotel is going to have service implications, it's going to have traffic and parking implications, and finding that right balance. So a unique set of circumstances influenced that particular outcome. As you jump down to a property like Port Royal, you have a once in probably 3 generation opportunity as you reflect back to the original John Volk building, as John was invited to come across from Palm Beach as their architect to execute the original building there. A building that really was a balance between a developer's need in the form that the Sample family had a certain amount of budget. They were trying to sell lots in Port Royal. They didn't want to overbuild the clubhouse. And so finding the right scale of both program as well as capital. But building it in the 50s and then fast forwarding to the impact of Hurricane Ian and the determination that the city made that it was going to be a complete write-off. They had to raise the building and start over. That was a direct outcome of the storm. And so it was, okay, if there was a 70-year set of lessons about how it lived, the types of program that it needed, and the longevity over that number of decades. How do we position the building, a new building, to be able to cater to that next 3 generations? How do we make sure that from a resiliency point of view, we're doing the right thing? So we're pulling that building back away from the ocean as compared to where it was originally constructed. We're pulling that building up, both in recognition of sea level change, but more importantly, flooding. I think we've all seen, particularly through Ian, Helene, and Milton, the impact of flooding, the movement of sand along these coastal environments, and how we can and should elevate that building. So the old dining room that is going up 9 feet in elevation as compared. The kitchens, which have tremendous amount of gas and electrical loads, are going up 12 feet from where they used to be, all to get them back and up and out. But it's really trying to understand what's changed over those 70 years for the user of the clubhouse. And in this case, it's a great food and beverage outlet. It's a place where you can host all of your friends. The community has changed over time in terms of some of the old homes evolving into the current construction that's happening in the community. And so how do you host that next evolution of people who choose to make a home in Port Royal? And I think what you'll see over the course of the next couple of years, breaking ground on Thursday this week, and then as we look out to the opening a couple of years from now, is a place that can continue to host those residents, but also, and perhaps more importantly, host their friends and their family, and really share what's unique about Naples in a great beachside setting.
You said something very interesting about the regional development. There was a cost consciousness about it because this area didn't have the attraction that it does now. And it has evolved into very high-end, very wealth-oriented. So, and that facility reflects that. It is, we've taken it through DRB. We've seen how it is a world-class club situation, and it responds to the environment. It responds to the culture, and it responds to the needs of that very high-end, wealthy community.
And I think in addition to some of the physical resiliency considerations, a big part of the community is thinking through the staff, thinking through who supports and facilitates all of these experiences, understanding what the club is currently doing in terms of affordable and staff housing off-site, minimizing traffic for those employees by building a whole shuttle system and being able to move them from those properties that they've arranged to bring people to the job site. We've actually located all of the staff facilities on the uppermost level within the club, where they have beautiful light. The place that they're going to have lunch every day is going to be flooded with southern-facing windows with light pouring in, a salad bar on offer, as well as hot meals on offer, so that you can make a day of it and you can support and retain all of the talent that you need in order to say to your members, this truly is a world-class facility for you as people who can choose to spend your time and money in a number of places.
You mentioned something very dear to my heart, and that's affordable housing for the workforce. And every one of the properties that you're working on now is hospitality, and it is increasing the number of employees necessary, which increases the demand for affordable housing. I'm glad to hear that the club is doing that, but on your other hospitality projects, is there a consideration for dealing with affordable housing, and how are your clients dealing with housing for their employees?
Great question, and it becomes the stumbling block. You can have access to all the capital in the world to build incredible facilities, but if you can't staff it and you can't deliver that level of service, it's all going to fall apart at the final hurdle. And so in each instance, whether it's here in Naples, the Four Seasons is actively talking to co-developers or potentially acquiring outright existing buildings and renovating them. There's a number of different strategies here in Southwest Florida, but we're doing work in Taos, for example, another remote location where, in order to attract talent and everybody from lifties to the people who are working in the bars, we're having to deliver staff housing there. We're working on staff housing in Big Sky, Montana, where all of a sudden you're depending on the weather, as you come down the Gallatin River Valley, and Bozeman gets isolated from Big Sky. So what does it mean for the Big Sky community? Sea Island, where we have a long-term family owner there who's rolled that property into a trust and co-manages Sea Island along with the Broadmoor out in Colorado Springs. And they're looking at long-term investments where they're actively outright building staff housing at the moment at Sea Island as part of a long-term master plan. And that master plan isn't just necessarily focused on physical experiences, but it's a comprehensive business plan that says, okay, if we are going to continue to deliver all of these capital projects, whether it's hotel rooms, whether it's condominiums, whether it's additional food and beverage experiences, whether it's outdoor experiences to get people into the marsh or onto the water, there are then all of these complementary business requirements that says, how do we staff it all? And so it's a uniform piece. We actually had we as a firm sponsor a fellowship program every year as part of what we feel is a responsibility to bring the next generation along. And so we're fortunate enough to be in a position where each year we offer somewhere between 2 and 4 fellowship positions, which is a salaried internship with the added benefit of curated research, meaning a person shows up with a proposal. We then find individuals within the firm who have a natural alignment with that research proposal. We help facilitate industry meetings with others whom we know who are aligned. And a number of years ago, we had one of our fellows focus on this ebb and flow of resort towns, where a town shrinks down in the wintertime, for example. This is particularly focused on the Northeast in the case of this research, but out on the Cape, for example, where a town shrinks way down in the wintertime. And what does it mean from a physical infrastructure point of view in the summertime when everybody shows up, both on the guest side, but also on the staff side? And so a number of different ways that we continue to aggregate lessons learned and share them out to clients, saying, that's great that we're drawing a beautiful hotel, but what else do we need to be thinking about to ensure that this thing is going to be as successful as we all hope it can be?
As I said, that's something that's close to my heart. I'm very involved in affordable housing in the county. And I've always said that when we have NIMBYs saying, oh, we don't want that in our neighborhood, it's devaluing our property if you have multifamily apartments for the workforce. And my attitude is it's not social welfare, it's an economic development issue. As if we cannot staff our hospitality and cannot provide the services that we need, we're going to lose our market share. And particularly younger generations, there are many more options out there, and they're willing to move from place to place. If this isn't suiting their needs, they're going to be finding someplace else to go to. So if you don't keep up with the trends and you don't provide that level of service and you raise the bar constantly, you're going to lose your market share. And I'm glad to hear that your clients understand that. Look, economically, they understand that that they have to provide that service if they're going to succeed.
Yeah, and part of it, you got to design a place that people want to call home, right? A place that they have pride in, and avoid this notion that they're somehow second-class citizens and therefore will degrade an entire community. Well, build and design a beautiful place for them to take pride in so that they can take ownership over their home, and by extension then be active participants in the community at large.
Exactly. All right, last question. And I ask this of everyone I interview. What one accomplishment in your career are you the most proud of?
I don't know that I have a singular accomplishment that I'm most proud of, but I will say that over the journey of my career, the light bulb that went off was this conversation around stewardship. And I think it's applicable to a number of different aspects of my day-to-day experience. I think that we are fortunate to work with many long-term minded clients who recognize the places where they're working, the incredible power and majesty of open spaces, whether it's thousands of acres out in the Everglades, in the case of a project that we're working on, or whether it's out in the mountains, whether it's in an urban setting, or whether it's on a beach. But understanding how to work sensitively in this place as long-term stewards. But the other piece of it that ties into stewardship is this incredible foundation of a practice that Bob Hart and Dave Howerton started in 1967. And I feel fortunate and to be in a place where I benefit every day from the relationships and the places that they've created, but also anticipate and look forward to those who come after me. The ways that I can share the stories that were told to me, the ways of working with our clients to create these places, and actively finding that next generation of people within our practice, or whether that comes through the fellowship program, whether that comes through people already under our roof who are growing and learning every day, but to position them to say, okay, so what happens after I'm off playing golf somewhere, and make sure that this story of our practice is able to extend well out into the future, the same way that some of these projects that, thus far, we're a decade here in Naples. We have an assignment out west. In the case of the Santa Lucia Preserve, that's been in the business for 30 years, we continue to execute homes on a single family, one by one basis. And so if we can continue to identify those long-term projects, the people within the business that are going to support those relationships going forward, I'll feel like I've done my part and helped to ensure that philosophy of stewardship and recognition of the importance of the role that we're playing when we're playing it, but also positioning places for continued success.
Wonderful legacy you're leading for yourself.
Well, we're just a small part of a much bigger experience for our clients, for the communities where we're working, for the environment that we're working within.
Tim, thank you for your time. Appreciate
Stephen,
it.
this is very
It's
excellent.
great to have a discussion.
Likewise. Enjoyed it very much.